Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I've learned so much with this gentleman in terms of helping people move their lives forward, helping them heal. And it just seems so simple. Through the arts. Literally, music is the healing answer to many, many, many challenging situations. And that could be people with the mental challenges, could be people incarcerated. The list goes on. And his organization, Baltic Street into Action, gets that done. And it's with the help of an insight of people that join us here on this podcast, which we're going to talk with one in just a moment. The man behind Baltic Street into Action is Peter Jampel, who's back with us. Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Steve, I'm really good. So glad to be with you.
And I love that you bring some of, it could be your team, some colleagues on board. And we have somebody on the phone today. Who is that?
Yeah. Today's guest is Emily Autrey. And Emily's a music therapist who works at Elizabeth Seton's Children's Center. And the work that she's going to describe today is very unique in our profession. And frankly, the services available at Elizabeth Seton are not available in any other facility in New York State. Emily is going to talk about working with children with complex medical conditions who have severe limitations in terms of mobility, cognition, and other forms of functioning. So I think Steve will add this podcast to a list of populations that I'm sure our listeners will discover new ways in which music and the arts can promote health and wellness. So Emily, thank you so much. I'm sorry for all the technical issues, but what you have to offer us is worth any obstacles, technically speaking. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you both so much. It's an honor to be here.
Great. One way of starting is just to understand your own journey to the place that you've arrived at professionally. What, in terms of your musical background, motivated you to become a music therapist?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. And I think one I ask students a lot. And so it's so good for me to reflect on it as well. From a very young age, I was always inclined towards not only music, but movement, being creative, being imaginative. And so I think that really planted a seed in me to pursue it through my education. In elementary school, I played in a steel drum band. Throughout middle school, I continued on. I became involved in theater. And then past high school, I really did want to pursue music more formally. And so I earned a degree in the Bachelor's of Music and Vocal Performance from the University of Washington. And from there, I kind of met I ended up at a crossroads I didn't know I had encountered. And that was, I really wanted to keep music in my life. And I really wanted to continue to share it, but in a form that was different than performance. And so really through some twists and turns and being able to observe a music therapist in my hometown, I found myself in New York City applying for a master's degree in music therapy at NYU, where you were teaching, Peter. And
Yes.
I was fortunate enough to be accepted, and that started this incredible journey of really becoming a music therapist and really learning what is required of a clinician and all the many people that you cross paths with in this field.
Yeah. As I remember, you worked in your internship. Did you work with John Mondanaro at Beth
Correct.
Israel?
I did.
Yes, you
Yes.
did. John was a guest here talking about his work in palliative care, which is
Yes.
now his area of specialization. But you had an experience working in medical music therapy, and I'm just wondering how that may have contributed to your current work with complex conditions with children.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I really found such interest and really meaningful work in palliative care. And it really did open a door to work within a population where palliative care is at the hem of what we do, in that it is not, and I'm sure John covered this, but it is not rooted in end of life care. It is about ensuring that the needs of the individual and the family are being met, as well as really supporting the person's quality of life or the child's quality of life who's in front of you. And so I think that really my internship experience, and of course working with John, really influenced my own interest in wanting to continue that work and working with children and families, and really this population especially being such a unique resident population in that we are the largest nonprofit post-acute care center in the country for children with medical complexities. And so that means we're treating infants to young adults who present with intellectual or developmental disabilities, medically complex diagnoses, rare genetic disorders, life-limiting conditions, disorders of consciousness. It really is a wide breadth of needs that we support. And so I really do find that not only palliative care is such a shining light in all that we do, but really a trauma-informed care approach as well.
Wow. You bring to light something that I believe many of us don't realize, that there is a degree for music therapy. I think many of us think, well, it's therapy and they use music to get that done. No, it's bigger than that. And when we talk about children, adolescents that you work with, Emily, what's the youngest age of a child?
Sure. I work with infants who were recently discharged from the NICU, for the neonatal intensive care unit. So really as young as a month to 2 months to 3 months. And so very, very young, just an individual who's just entered the world and needs robust support in order to function or and develop. And you're absolutely right, Steve. I think that the field of music therapy is one where we are training and undergoing a lot of education in how to be really the most informed and intentional with what we're offering in our services, and that we are whatever environment we're in. So for me, I'm in a more medical environment. So I'm going to approach a session if there is a child who recently received medication for a seizure, and I'm coming in to provide a music therapy session. I'm coming in informed, knowing that, oh, this child, because of this medication, they might be experiencing some lethargy or some drowsiness. So I'm not going to combat that with my intervention. I'm really going to support how they are feeling in the moment and how their body is reacting maybe to a medication. How can I best tailor my intervention, my session, to support them so that I'm not I'm not trying to stimulate them when their body is trying to to sort of consolidate energy and rest. I'm supporting them in that, and so I think that just being a small snapshot of the many things that we do.
What a wake up in knowing that an infant can receive music therapy. I mean, that says it all to me in that how impactful this can be, because that infant doesn't know just know sounds, and it makes such a difference. Wow, I had no idea that that's what that answer would be.
Yes, yes, and just to add to that, it is absolutely with care and intention, especially for infants who are still developing. That again, we have very specific interventions that we offer infants so as not to overstimulate them, but also as a means to support the family or the parent or the caregiver who is in this infant's life, and maybe foresaw them going home after birth, but now they're not at that. They're in a different home. They're at a home of a care center that because the infant needs that amount of robust care. And so really I try to then very much tailor my approach to what the family needs or what the parent needs, and how can I support them in bonding with their child, in providing moments for nurturance, for joy, for all those things that I think new parents or families look forward to in those first few months, years. And so I think music therapy can also serve as this connection for families to feel supported, that they can still sing to their child, they can create a lullaby, they can still hold them as we're providing music, that there is still celebration to be felt, even in a very, very difficult situation.
Yeah. The creation of a place that feels like home, that provides the full range of services, not only to the client, but to their families, is really very special, and that it provides special education, rehabilitation, and child life care, and that the music therapist is very much a part of the team, and that the services that the music therapist provides are not just done without a great deal of sensitivity towards the needs of the child or the young adolescent, and that the therapist is then reading, sometimes through very subtle signs from the individual's capacity to communicate, how it's being received. Can you give us an example, perhaps, of how music works with one of the children that you've been involved with?
Absolutely. So I think I love that you mentioned the communication piece, because I think we can sort of talk about music as a means of communication, and specifically with our resident population, many of the children and teens, young adults, they are non-speaking, or they communicate in nuanced ways that don't include words. So what does that mean? That might mean that their breath pattern is how they communicate. That might mean their eye gaze. Looking up means yes, looking to the side means no. That might mean how they move their fingers and how they might gesture. And so as a music therapist, I find myself really striving to stay creative and stay innovative in how I am connecting with each individual. And one example of that is a resident who has taught me so much. I'll just preface that in speaking with her mother about our sessions and about the work and about this opportunity, she she gave her permission and praise to talk about her daughter and use her real name because she really wanted her daughter's story to be told. And this individual's name is Sade, and she's in her early 20s. She has a wonderful bond with her mother, and she's a very fashionable dresser and is a big fan that I've learned of hip hop, rap, pop music. And she's also with us at Elizabeth Seton Children's Center because she experienced a traumatic event in her teenage years that really altered her level of consciousness. So it altered her. She is in a decreased level of consciousness with global impairment and global spasticity throughout her body. So her mobilization is through a wheelchair. She receives food from a G tube, from a feeding tube, and she is non-speaking, but she is very communicative. And I'll tell you how I came to really discover that. When I first started working with Sade, I had conversations with her mother just about some of her interests, memories of her and Sade as she was growing up, and maybe some of even her music interests before this accident happened in her life. And I really approached the work in wanting to support Sade's comfort and really sort of highlight her quality of life. So I was bringing in a lot of live instruments. I was bringing in resources for beat making, and I would see nuanced shifts in affect, in her facial affect, but sometimes I was, kind of scratching my head, saying, "Gosh, okay, I'm not sure if this is really the connection that I've made with Sade. Like something is kind of missing." And it wasn't until, and I'm not even kidding you, 2 years later that I decided to bring in an intervention involving pre-recorded music, and that I placed headphones on Sade's over Sade's ears, and I did the same, and so that we were listening to the same music. I did a lot of volume checks because you have to be very, very careful when working with someone who's at a different level of consciousness to not overstimulate them. And I had created a playlist of music of sort of the pop, hip hop, rap hits of 2011, 2012, 2013. And I pushed play, and I'm not even kidding you, within seconds, I started to see Sade widen her eyes. She began to smile, things I'd never seen before from her. She began moving her right arm, and it almost looked like her tongue started making this motion, almost like someone who's trying to sing. And it was the most miraculous experience to be witness to, because it was Sade in that moment communicating to me, like, yes, this is it. This is what is speaking to me.
Wow. And
it was such a powerful session, and for me as a clinician, that it is so important to keep trying, to keep bringing in new ideas, new interventions to connect with someone. And it really was just this incredible, I'll never forget talking with her mother afterwards, and just, I saw Sade, she seemed like she was just in the music in a way I'd never seen her before. And her mom was like, I know, it's music is such a way in for her. I see that happen too. And it was just through something that I hadn't yet come to as the key. And so I share that as just a means of when we're working with individuals who might have a different communication profile, they are still communicating. It's just up to us to really find the nuanced means of them telling us what's working and, no, that's not quite it. Or, yes, this is it. this is what I needed. This is how I will express myself. And it stayed with me years later, that moment and thereafter. And so now I'm able to sort of incorporate our sessions involve now sort of this beautiful pattern of listening to music, recreating it with with instruments, and just seeing again this heightening of her senses. They just blossom in the moment, and it's really, really special.
I have chills. Like hearing that story, I feel Peter and Emily, I feel like I'm there. Like I was there. I'm watching her face and how this discovery of these new sounds. Do you remember any of the artists on that playlist? I probably played them on radio as a kid. So I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious. Any come to mind?
Absolutely. Taylor Swift,
Okay.
Beyonce, Nicki Minaj,
Got it.
Katy Perry, Bruno Mars, and it was really I really credit Shuddy's mother, Christine, who again is such a wonderful advocate not only in her daughter's life but for music therapy in general. She really she gave me these clues or these hints to kind of follow, to say like, oh, I remember her listening to this, or yes, she was an original Swiftie.
Wow.
And she, and so it was, it's sometimes a puzzle that you're putting together and really trying to just find, what's the way, what do we need to try to connect?
The key that those artists were the key to connect to her. And in side note, I have a 16-year-old daughter who lives with me, and I never filter her music. I'm going to admit, when she was like 3 years ago or so, I might be in the car and a song comes on that she put on. I look at her like, no. Very few though. And what you just said, Emily, I feel better about myself as a parent that when I get in, she puts on whatever she wants. I recognize some of the artists, some of it goes a little deep in terms of hip hop, and I just let her listen and I don't say a word. And this, for the reason that you're describing, that it's connecting with her, it's it's speaking to her. And then I let play whatever you want. I'm not even going to touch a thing, and it's all good. Wow.
Emily, I think one aspect of the music therapist's job is to investigate the music that most hits home with one's client. And you went back to 2011, 12, and 13. I'm assuming that those years were pre-accident years. And so that by accessing music that she connected to prior to the traumatic event, you had the best chance of reawakening her pre-existing connection to that music. One thing that I think is important to appreciate in working with this population is how it impacts the caregivers and the music therapists. Emily, I know from our previous connections at Elizabeth Seton that the facility works very hard to support and nurture its staff. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like for you personally to work with this client population and the efforts that the facility makes to support you?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up. I really feel that this facility, I think, we are tasked sometimes with what feels like a very, very challenging task in providing so much comprehensive care for each individual that lives here. And with that, you really, each staff member feels it. You really have to give your all. And it's because we're not focused on the child or the teenager or young adult or infant merely having their sort of basic needs met, surviving. We want each person to feel heard, to feel seen, to thrive in their environment to the best of their ability. And so I think for staff, you are aiming to create conditions of possibility. And I know as a music therapist, that's really what my focus is on, is how can I create conditions of possibility for each resident? And not only the residents and families, but how can I create an environment for staff that might help their day feel a little more joyful, feel a little more relaxed or balanced. And I've certainly had many nurses come up to me and share, Emily, when I was providing medications and I stepped into the room and you were doing a session with this resident, I just wanted to share that the music, it was so beautiful, or the music allowed me to take a breath and recenter because I had just been scrambling and stressing all morning, and I didn't know I needed it until I stepped into that room and I heard that resident laughing, or I heard the music you were making, or I heard the song that you and the resident were writing. So it really, I think music, it not only serves as this creative expressive outlet for the residents, but it really serves as this connective tissue among staff as well, and can really sort of transcend these spaces so that we're promoting an environment that is healing focused.
We're just about out of time. I would love it. These stories are amazing. They really are, Peter.
Yeah. Emily, thank you so much for discussing the work. I know, it's the half an hour just flies by, but again,
Sure
thanks so much. And we're very glad we got through all the technical issues.
Yeah, it has been wonderful, Emily, having you on here. And I just got one thought here. I wonder what would happen if Sade heard Sade, the artist. I'm just curious, like her namesake.
Yeah.
I just wonder what that would if it would resonate, because it's the same name, and you never know.
I
want to share the address for the organization, balticstreetintoaction.com. Wonderful work, a lot of insight on the website, and also it's a nonprofit. So if you feel so moved to support, it would be truly appreciated to do more of this kind of work. Peter and Emily, thank you so much for being here today. Really, really appreciate it.
Great, Steve.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.